South Bend is not the likeliest of headquarters for world domination. And this morning we haven't really heard that word much. We've heard collaboration, cooperation, humility. And actually that's not what we're plotting downtown, thankfully. Quite the opposite, really, because in my world, thinking big has come to mean being small and doing it really well. I graduated from Notre Dame as a PLS, or Great Books major, a title in and of itself full of grandeur. I loved how they talked about us being kings, heroes, and saints, and that is exactly what I intended to do. With the sparkle of international service in my eyes, I basically wanted to be Mother Teresa and change the world. We leave Notre Dame believing that we can and should make big gestures that have a wide impact, and that we have the capacity to do anything. In many ways we do, but returning after several years of teaching at a rural orphanage in Honduras to South Bend, I realized that I was receiving an invitation to a very little street in the inner city of a Midwestern rusty town with a small group of intelligent, passionate, but pretty ordinary people who had chosen to make their home among the homeless. I resisted this invitation strongly. I did not imagine myself settling anywhere quite so humble as South Bend, having spent the majority of my middle school and high school years in Southeast Asia, and having taken every possible opportunity in college for international adventure. But some part of me, the best part of me, was saying, stay, commit, be ordinary, and discover what an adventure it is to be small. And that is how I ended up making my home on South St. Joseph Street with the Catholic worker community, or the Worker for short, in South Bend, Indiana. Peter Morin, friend of Dorothy Day, who helped found the Catholic Worker, said, "We are building a new society in the shell of the old, a society where it is easier to be good." This is the vision, along with the Gospels and church tradition, that has shaped the Catholic worker movement and that drew several dozen of us, movers and shakers, to make our home on South St. Joseph Street. But there is one person in particular, a person who has modeled for many of us the small but extraordinary life that I would like to introduce you to. Her name is Sheila McCarthy. Many of us are at the Worker because of a personal invitation we received from Sheila to come and see and stay, in the words of Mother Teresa. Sheila is a Notre Dame theology PhD student who, in her spare time, raises chickens, teaches yoga, dumpster dives, sometimes behind your dorm, and rehabs abandoned properties, and, we discovered, directs hit Broadway musicals. Sheila is the kind of person who, sometimes dangerously, could inspire a movement with her radically out-of-the-box but deeply loving way of life. Last year, around this time, my husband and I received an interesting email from Sheila in which she had worked out some of the casting for what we thought was a theatrical costume party. Sheila had just watched the critically acclaimed movie version of the musical Les Miserables. This was her first exposure to Victor Hugo's epic depiction of revolutionary France, and it affected her deeply. We were to learn later that she did not imagine a costume party. Sheila had a vision for putting on a full-scale production of the entire Broadway musical at Our Lady of the Road Drop-In Center downtown on May 3rd. She would direct it, and she had plans for a pit orchestra. When we heard this, I am ashamed to admit that my husband and I laughed. We thought she was a little crazy, because we didn't really believe that we could pull off something quite this big, at least not very well. But thankfully, we were very wrong. The story of Les Miserables, with its battle of justice and mercy, its rich characters, and revolution turned resurrection, resonates deeply with the mission of the Catholic worker, and soon Sheila's vision became utterly contagious. She assigned parts to a 60-person cast, crew, and orchestra, and these were not 60 experienced actors, singers, and musicians. This was a random selection of people, some of us who could sing, some of us just who wanted to join in, that Sheila knew. I think the thing that amazed me most about this production, which we did manage to pull off somehow, circa 19th century French Revolution costumes, pit orchestra and all, was the way that the chorus, a group of people who did not necessarily want to be out in front, actually became the poor of France, the student revolutionaries, the lovely ladies at the docks, the women weeping at the fall of the barricade. We had all entered in so deeply. Something miraculous took place in those 3 months, a vulnerability that made the community glow. Perhaps the most poignant moment of that one-night-only production was when a homeless man wandered in off of the streets into the middle of the stage, where the actors playing the Bishop and Jean Valjean were sitting down to dinner. The story had become so real to us that the Bishop simply extended his hand in greeting to this outcast too. That is the thing about entering in deeply with vulnerability, letting go of your need to be individually important and great. Glorious things can happen. You discover that you are important and great, but not alone. Sheila gets this deeply and invites others in. I think towns like South Bend are ideally suited for this kind of transformation. South St. Joseph Street is not so different from any other inner city block in South Bend, or any other industrialized city across America that has been emptied out by factories that are now hollow, economic downturn, and suburban sprawl. South Bend happens to be full of very creative and interesting people with a good deal of education, and it happens to have very inexpensive property, a good combo for vision. And that is where we, as people of goodwill, come into the story as small but powerful agents of resurrection. Last year, my husband and I watched the very same Sheila McCarthy purchase a massive, old, rundown house next to the Catholic worker. This house was on tax sale for $800. Yes, it needed a new roof immediately and a ton of work, but we were totally inspired by her courageous effort to reclaim something that had fallen into ruin and make it beautiful again on our very own street. 2 doors down from Sheila was another very large abandoned home up on tax sale. We deliberated thinking, my husband is still in grad school, this is a huge amount of work, we would be foolish to take on this size of project. But friends of ours who also live on South St. Joseph Street said, we'll join you, we'll help, and then we can share this house together. So we decided to go for it. This made literal the echo of Peter Morin's words, building a new society in the shell of the old, a society where it is easier to be good. The joyful process of so many friends pitching in to help the renovating process, the truly satisfying, if extremely exhausting work of making beautiful again something that had fallen into neglect, is transformative. And now, after 3 months of work, we will soon inhabit our dream home with no mortgage. Not all of us are the initial visionaries. Not all of us will inhabit abandoned property, and not all of us will put on large-scale theatrical productions simply because we're inspired to do so. But it is powerful to realize that you can do these things, that it's actually quite simple to do so. People in small communities with a collective, truthful vision can do anything. You can do anything. I truly believe that. Whether you join the good work of another, or whether the inspiration strikes you and you invite others in, miraculous, seemingly impossible things can happen when little people with a strong, generous, committed vision unite in good faith to make life together. It can be hard, yes, very hard, and it doesn't change everything, but it does change you, and that, I believe, is exactly what changes the world. Thank you.